Welcome back. It won't be long after you start creating files that you'll want to start organising them. This will mean grouping files together into their own relevant folders. Let's open Windows Explorer again and navigate to the Documents folder. I've been working on a little project. I've grouped all the files I've created while I've been working on this project into a folder called Project 1. Let's take a look inside. I'm going to double click on the Project 1 folder. We can now see that I have several types of files and a few of each type. It's fairly manageable as it is, but as the project grows it's likely to generate a lot more files. At this point it can start to get difficult to find what you're looking for, so let's start organising these files into some subfolders. First we need to create some subfolders to hold these files. I'm going to separate each file type into its own folder. I have Word, Excel and PowerPoint files, so I'll need 3 folders. Of course, there are a couple of ways to create folders. Our first choice is to select the Home ribbon at the top and then click New Folder in the New section. This creates a new folder at the bottom of the list. Windows quickly resorts the list for me as folders will normally appear before files. It's been given the name of New Folder. With the text highlighted blue, I could type a new name for the folder. Let's create the other subfolders first. I'll use the same technique again for the next one, so I'll click back on the Home ribbon and select New Folder. Notice as we already have a folder called New Folder, this second one is called New Folder 2. Another way to create folders is by clicking the right mouse button while the mouse is in some blank space in the right hand panel. From the menu that appears, select New and then Folder. And as we have folders called New Folder and New Folder 2, this one is called New Folder 3. Remember to accept the default name just by clicking somewhere else. In some empty space is normally best. Great, now I have 3 folders to store each of the file types. But what happens when I come back here in a week, a month or even longer to find a file? How am I going to know which folder it is in? When creating folders, and files for that matter, it is far better to give them a valid, meaningful name. Confession time again. I'm as guilty as anyone of thinking I'll just create a folder and throw these files into it. I won't need them again, so I'll just leave the default name. Then several months down the line, I'm clearing out old files and I find all these subfolders starting with New Folder. So I have to go into each one to try and work out what the files inside are, why I created the folder and if I still need any of it. So let's make these a little more usable and change the names. Click the name of the folder once to select the folder. Then click the name again so that you can edit it. Don't do these 2 clicks too quickly because Windows will think that you want to open the folder instead of renaming it. You are best to click once, move the mouse away, then back again to click the second time. Now we have our blue highlighting back. I can just type the new name now. Let's call this one Project 1 Word Files. Once that's done, hit Enter or click somewhere else on the screen to accept the name. Notice it jumps to alphabetical order as soon as I hit Enter. The other way to rename a folder is to right click on it. So move the mouse to the New Folder 2 and click the right mouse button. From the menu that appears, select Rename. We now have the blue highlighting again, so I'll enter a name of Project 1 Excel files and hit Enter. One more to go. I'll click once and then click again on the name to give this a name of Project 1 PowerPoint files. Now that we have the folders, we need to move the correct files into them. As it's top of the list, let's start by moving the Excel files. When you only have 1 or 2 items to move, I find the simplest way is to drag them into the folder I want to move them to. So the first Excel file is called Inventory. I'll move the mouse so the pointer is over the file, click and hold the left mouse button down, and then while still holding the mouse button, move the mouse. You'll see it picks up the outline of a file indicating that you're about to move the file. Once the folder that I want to move them to is highlighted, I can release the mouse button. That's moved that file. Let's do the same for risks. Move the mouse so the pointer is over the icon, click and hold the mouse button down and move the mouse while still holding the button. Now move the mouse to the folder that you want to move the files to. Wait for the folder to be highlighted. Once it's highlighted, release the mouse button. One more time with the last Excel file, Schedule. Click and hold and drag it to the folder, then release the mouse button. The next folder is Project 1 PowerPoint files. So let's move the PowerPoint files. Now that I have shown you how to move one file at a time, we can expand this technique to move multiple files or folders at a time. Click on the first file once to select it. I'll click on Budget Outline. Now, on the keyboard, press and hold down the Control key. It's normally in the bottom left of the keyboard and labelled CTRL. While you're holding this key pressed, you can select multiple files. So I can click on Project Overview once to select that. You should notice that both Budget Outline and Project Overview are now highlighted. Keep holding the Control key and click on Proposal file once. Now that I have all the files that I want selected, I can release the Control key. To move these files in one go, I use exactly the same technique as before. Click and hold the mouse on one of the selected files. If you misclick and lose the highlighting, you'll need to start again, so be careful where you click. With the mouse button pressed, drag the pointer to the folder the files are to be moved to. Once the folder is highlighted, I can release the mouse button. There we go, all 3 files have been moved. That just leaves us with the Word files to move. When you want to select multiple adjacent files, it's even easier. You can either draw a box around the files to select them. To do this, click and hold the mouse on some empty space. While holding the mouse button, move the mouse. You'll notice a box appears. Move the mouse so that this box encompasses the files that you want to move, and then release the mouse button. That should have selected all the files for you. If there are a lot of files in the list that you want to select, you can also click on the first one to select it, then move to the last file that you want selected. But before you click it, hold down the Shift key. Now with Shift held down, click the file. You should see that all files between the first and second clicks have been selected. So far we have dragged the files into the subfolder. You may have guessed already, but there is another way to do this involving cut and paste. With the files selected, right-click on one of them. From the menu that comes up, select Cut. This cut option is also available on the Home ribbon in the Clipboard section. Once I select Cut either from the ribbon or from the right-click menu, you'll notice that the icons appear to be faded out slightly. This is an indicator that they have been cut. Now we navigate to the folder that we wish to move them to. In this case, I'll double-click the Project 1 Word Files folder. At the moment, it is empty. Right-click on some blank space in the right-hand panel. You'll notice that the Cut option is now replaced with an option to Paste. Again, this option is also available on the Home ribbon. I use that one this time. Once I do, all the Word files that I selected appear. And if I use the up arrow to move back up one level of the tree to the Project 1 folder, we can see that the files are no longer here. We've done some more work on our Project 1 and have created a new document as a result. I was in a bit of a rush, so I just used the default name, which doesn't help me remember what is in the file. So before I forget, let's rename the file to something more sensible. To rename a file, we do exactly the same as a folder. So click once on it to select it, then click again on the name. Remember, if you click twice too quickly, Windows will think that you want to open the file. So make sure you pause between each click. If this keeps happening for you, try the other method. Right-click on the file and select Rename from the menu that appears. With the name highlighted, I can just type whatever I want to call it. I'll call this Project 1 Conclusion. Let's say we want to work on this file a little more, but we don't want to alter this copy of it. We want to create a second copy that we can make changes to. To do this, we need to copy the existing file. There are at least 3 ways of doing this. The first is to right-click on the file and select Copy from the menu. Or we can select the Home ribbon and click Copy from the Clipboard section. Or lastly, with the file selected, I can press Ctrl and C on the keyboard. Doing any of these creates a copy of the file in an area called the clipboard. This is a temporary area of the computer, a bit like a scratch pad. With the file copied to the clipboard, we now need to paste it. We can paste the file into pretty much any location. Let's start by creating our duplicate file in the same folder. I have 3 ways of doing it again. I can right click some empty space in this right hand panel and select paste from the menu. I could press Ctrl and V on the keyboard, or I can go back to the Home tab and click paste. You'll notice that the copy of the file has been given copy on the end of the name. If I was to create more than one copy, it would just add a sequential number onto the end. We can make a copy of folders in the same way. Let's make a copy of the folder with the Word files in it. I'll click it once to select, and then select the Home tab and click Copy. Then go straight back into the Home tab and select Paste. There, we have a copy of the folder. Notice that the name has had copy put on the end. If I jump into the original folder, you can see that we still have all the original files, just as I'd expect. Let's move back up a level and go into the copy version of the folder. Notice that I have all the files listed again. They don't have copies after their names, but they are in fact copies of all the files in the original folder. If I make any changes, I would still have unedited versions in the original folder. Now, there aren't many reasons to have multiple copies of files and folders in the same place. It actually just creates confusion as to which version you should be using. But now that we have a copy of the Project 1 conclusion file and Project 1 Word files folder, we can move these, perhaps move them to another drive as a backup copy. This computer that I'm using here has a second drive labelled D. On this drive I've created a folder called My Backup Folder. Let's move these items to this folder. The first thing to do is select both of them. Just as before, I could click the first and hold down Shift or Control and click the second. Or, with a couple of items like this, I find it quickest to draw a box around them. So I click in some empty space and with the mouse button held down, drag up the mouse. You'll see a box appears. Keep dragging so that both the items are inside the box and release the mouse. That's both of them selected. Now before, when we've moved files into subfolders, we've been able just to drag the file. That won't work here as we want to move them to another drive. So this time we need to cut them. We can use the same 3 techniques as we saw for cut and paste. So I could just right click one of the items and select cut from the menu. I could click the home ribbon and select cut, or I could use the shortcut of Ctrl and X. Once I do one of these, take a close look at the icons. They have taken on a ghost-like appearance. This just gives a visual indicator that the items are currently in a cut state. Now I navigate to the location I want to move them to. So I'll select this PC, then double click on the D drive, and then double click the My Backup folder. Now we need to paste the items here, so I can right click on some space and select paste, or click the home ribbon and select paste, or the keyboard shortcut of Ctrl and V. That's it. Now we can see our copies have been placed in this folder. But what about the folders full of Excel and PowerPoint files? We should probably create backup copies of these as well. So let's jump back to the Project 1 folder in Documents. This time I'll do it a slightly quicker way. I'll select the 2 folders. If they're adjacent, I find it quickest to draw the box to select multiple items. Now I'll right click and select Copy, just as before. Of course I could use the keyboard shortcut of Ctrl C or the home ribbon. Now, rather than pasting the folders within this Project 1 folder and then moving the copies, I can create the copies directly in the My Backup folder on the D drive. So let's navigate there. This PC, double click D, and then double click the My Backup folder. Now I just need to paste the contents of the clipboard to this location. Let's use the ribbon for this one. Home, then paste. There you go. Notice that names don't have copy at the end. Because we made copies in a different location to the originals, Windows doesn't need to put a copy at the end to differentiate between the originals and these. Let's move on to deleting files and folders. I'll navigate back to the Project 1 folder and use some of these to demonstrate. Project 1 isn't finished yet. I was a bit too quick to create the Project 1 conclusion file, so we need to get rid or delete it. First, select the file by clicking it once. Now I can either hit delete or backspace on the keyboard, or I can click the right mouse button and select delete, or you'll find the delete button on the home ribbon. Once you do one of these, the file is removed, but it's not actually gone completely. It's moved to an area called the recycle bin. You'll find this on the desktop, and the icon looks like a waste paper bin. Double click this and we get another Windows Explorer window. Notice the address bar says that we are looking in the recycle bin. We can see the file that we just deleted in the main window. It tells us the original location of the file as well. Now if I deleted this file by mistake, I could come in here, click the file once to select it, then right click on the file and select Restore. This would take the file out of the recycle bin and put it back to where it was before I deleted it. So when I close this first Windows Explorer window, we can see the file is back in the Project 1 folder. Let me delete it once again. I'll click it once to select, then select the home ribbon and click delete. Now I'll open the recycle bin again. To permanently delete any and in fact everything in the recycle bin, we need to empty it. If I click on the recycle bin tools at the top, I get the option to empty recycle bin. Once I click this, the recycle bin will be emptied and any files or folders held within will be permanently gone. If you want a slightly quicker way to empty the recycle bin, then you can just right click on the icon on the desktop and select empty recycle bin. Or we can bypass the recycle bin altogether. I'll jump into my Project 1 Word files and select one of the Word documents. If I go back into the home ribbon, we've seen the big red cross to delete before. But if I click on the little down arrow just below, I can see an option to permanently delete. This will bypass the recycle bin and delete the file or folder. In this case, I have to confirm that I know what I'm doing by clicking yes. And if we look in the recycle bin, it's empty, as the file has been permanently deleted. Just before we leave this topic of deleting files and folders, let me just add that when you delete a file or folder on a network, then it will bypass the recycle bin by default. In fact, there isn't an option to use the recycle bin when deleting files or folders across a network. So if you have a home or shared folder or drive on your work or school computer, you might have a G or H drive whose contents is the same no matter which computer you log on to, or an X or Z drive that you put stuff in to share with your department or team. When you delete files from these, they will be gone for good. There isn't a recycle bin in this scenario to catch them for you. What if you need to find a file or folder but you can't remember where you left it? Well, Windows Explorer has a handy search tool built in. In the top right there is a search box. You can enter all or part of a file or folder's name. So let's say I'm looking for a file called Business Plan. You'll see that as I type it's already searching to find the file. I can either select it from the drop down, or if it doesn't find the item while I've been typing, just click on the arrow on the right. By default, it will look in the current folder and any subfolders. So I started in the Documents folder, so it would search through the My Random Files folder and the Project 1 folder, along with any other folders that are there. As it searches, you'll get a list of anything that matches. I find it best to start in the Documents or Pictures folders rather than this PC, for example, because if you search the whole system, it will find a lot of system files. These are files that are used to run the computer and not ones that you will normally need to touch. So by starting in Documents or Pictures, then you will get back only files or folders that you have created. Up at the top you have a Search Tools ribbon. From here you can specify where to search. Just the current folder or the current folder and all subfolders, for example. You can specify the type of file you are looking for by clicking the Kind button. So if you're just looking for pictures, you can specify this here. If you know that you worked on a file recently, you can specify a date modified. This will stop the result showing a lot of older archived files. particularly useful if you keep everything you've ever created. Or perhaps you're looking for one of the older files. Again, you can just specify a date with the Date Modified button. One of the things I find a little frustrating with the search tool is that it doesn't tell you where the file is located. So if I had several projects in separate folders, I'm likely to find a business case file for each project. So this search result would just be business plan after business plan, without telling me what the business plan was for. Yeah, I could have given them more descriptive names, but let's assume I didn't foresee this as a problem. Everything's in its own folder. I thought that would be enough. Anyway, so to find out where a file is located, I can click once on it to select it, then click the right mouse button. From the menu that appears, select Open File Location. And there we go, we've jumped to the location. Just check the address bar at the top to confirm where it has jumped you to. If this isn't the one you want, then click the back arrow in the top left to go back to the search results. If you're looking for a file that you've worked on or at least opened recently, there is a slightly more efficient way than using the search tool. If I click on Quick Access at the very top of the left panel in Windows Explorer, then at the top of the right panel I see a list of frequent folders. This will normally be your standard documents, pictures and video folders. And below this I have a list of recently accessed files. Here it even tells me the location, which is handy. To open any of them, just double click the file. In this video we have been working with files and folders. We have looked at creating and naming subfolders to help us keep organised and the importance of using good naming conventions so we can find things again. We move files and folders either into subfolders or between different drives. We looked at creating copies of files and folders, then moving the copies as well as creating copies in different folders and drives. We looked at deleting files and folders and the role of the recycle bin plays when deleting from our own machines. I showed you how to find files and folders by using the search tool in Windows Explorer or using the recent items list in the quick access section to get back to previously worked on items. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video.